Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. I never thought I'd be one of those people who have a crazy mother in law. I mean, what did I do to deserve this? This woman is a pain in my neck. It's like she's always hovering around us, that I wonder if I married her and her daughter. My wife has tried several times to tell her mom to back down, but she just can't let go. I understand to an extent because my wife is an only child and her father left when she was 2. He just up and left without an explanation after giving her mom a difficult time. The only thing I'm grateful for about their union is that my wife is the result. The rest of it is not worth it. My mother in law doesn't trust any man near her daughter because she is afraid they will do the same thing that was done to her. I sure do not plan to leave my loving wife, not now, not ever. While my wife and I were dating, my mother in law would scrutinize everything I did. She tried to find a fault before we finally tied the knot. I thought that if I went through the marriage, she would understand that I didn't plan to leave. But that wasn't enough. We have 2 babies now, but she is still hovering. I'm beginning to think there is nothing I can do to change her mind, but I didn't want to keep living like this. I seriously cannot stand it. She is always in our business and comes to the house whenever she likes. The mistake we made was to give her a key to our home. We did that because both my wife and I work, and we felt more comfortable leaving the kids with her instead of any nanny since they were still so young. But now, I think a babysitter would do just fine. One weekend, she came by the house. We had just put the kids to bed so my wife and I could have our intimate time, and there she was, barging into our home. I was looking forward to spending time with my wife before we unwillingly welcomed an intruder. A few times, she accused me of not spending enough time with my family, and she was sure I couldn't keep her home, blah, blah, blah. That got my wife so upset, she asked her to leave. But she is her mom and didn't like standing up to her even when she knew she was right. That's the only thing I didn't appreciate in my wife. So I was surprised that she asked her to leave at the time. But that was the only time she stood up to her for me, and it was beginning to feel like I was the enemy. I find it hard to believe that I have to carry this cross. I work in the cybersecurity industry and my work is very classified, so I can't give so many details. However, on a very fateful day, I worked from home and we asked my mother in law to watch the kids while my wife went to work. Whenever my wife isn't around, I become the enemy. My mother in law mistreats me when my wife is around, but it is worse when she isn't. I was swamped working and I lost track of time. She came into our home office and started ranting about how irresponsible I was and that I couldn't come to check on the kids. I explained to her that I was very busy, which was why my wife and I asked her to come to the house so I could concentrate during working hours. She didn't have it, and one thing led to another, and my laptop was thrown to the floor and blacked out. I had a lot of essential files in there, and in fact, some evidence for the police. That was a huge problem because I was tracking something that could have significantly helped an investigation. But because of her anger, it was all gone. It gets really twisted because whenever some evidence was gathered, it would just vanish one way or another. We got so close, and now the evidence is also gone. The police came for my mother in law because she was a suspect. Before now, they couldn't pin the case on anyone. but my mother-in-law gave them someone to hold responsible. I'm unashamedly excited about this. Serves mother-in-law right, though my wife feels terrible and is scared of what they will do to her mother. She was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and her hatred for me and lack of emotional stability put her in trouble, which has nothing to do with me. This shouldn't have happened. She could have just let me do my work, but no. She got what she was looking for. The police detained my mother-in-law and she was refused bail until they had something concrete. Honestly, I wouldn't blame the police. What would you think if you have been following a case and every time you get close to something and know you smell a rat, you either reach a dead end or something happens to the evidence? Desperate situations call for desperate measures, even if a 50-year-old single lady had to be caught in the crossfire by her own doing. After a few days, they confirmed that she had nothing to do with the case, so she was allowed bail. Those few days were my happiest. It felt like I could breathe fresh air again after being underwater for so long. In those days, I realized how unhappy I was when she was around. I was always on my toes and tolerated her because of my wife. When I heard that we could bail her, my wife noticed that I wasn't too pleased. So she made a sly remark about me returning to the real prison. That caught my attention because it meant that my wife was well aware of how I felt about her mother. But not much was done. She spoke to her mom a few times, but not in a way to really get her attention and put her in order. That caused a fight between my wife and me. When I brought it up, she countered it. She made it seem like I always allowed her mom because I was so engrossed with her liking me. But I expected her to perform some magic and be the bad guy who didn't side with her mom. She also said some of the things her mom complained about were true. That was the craziest thing I had heard all year. I was so hurt. We said many horrible things to each other until I couldn't do it anymore and left her in the room. Yes, it's true that at the beginning I was trying to get her mom to like me, but it's been years now and nothing has changed. Was I wrong to have expected my wife to keep her mother in check? I don't think so. My wife and I had this thing where we didn't go to bed angry, and whenever we were in the house together, we would sleep in the same room. It was a way to ensure that we always addressed the elephant in the room. Neither of us was ready to apologize, so I slept in the kids' room. I don't know what my wife did, and I didn't care. I usually went to her whenever we had an argument, but I decided she had to come to me this time. Before she woke up, I went to the gym, stayed out all day, and came back in the night so she would know that I was really upset. She called me, but I didn't pick up the call. I just wasn't ready, though. I knew that that was the day we had to pick up her mom. I wasn't interested either. Both of them were perfect for each other. That evening, I came home, but my wife wasn't home with the kids. I was happy because I still wasn't ready for a conversation, even though I knew it had to be had. We had never gone a day without talking to each other, no matter how angry we were. Later, I decided that I'd call if they were away by 8 p.m. She came home a few minutes before 8 p.m. and tried to behave as if nothing had happened, but I didn't have it. We had to talk about it, or we were not moving on. As for my mother-in-law, I'm done giving excuses for her. By now, she knew I was here to stay, and if that wasn't enough for her, then that was her problem. I went to the kids' playroom to have some daddy time with them when my wife came in and joined. She knew I wouldn't behave weirdly in front of the kids. We prepared them for bed, and once we were done, she apologized and said she was just frustrated and shouldn't have poured out her anger on me. I also apologized for all the things I said and for avoiding her. She told me that after she picked up her mom, She had an extensive conversation with her. She told her mom that she could no longer come to our house whenever she wanted. She was old enough and now had a home. If she wanted to visit, she would have to find out if it was okay too. She also told her that we would be getting a babysitter to watch the kids, but if we were going to be gone long, we would drop them off at her house. She set boundaries that we both agreed should have been set years before. Her mom was distraught and blamed me for taking her daughter away from her and leaving her with no one. She said that now I wanted to take her grandkids also. It dawned on us that I was never the problem, and she didn't like me, not because she thought I would behave like my wife's dad, but because she was lonely. This was why she always found excuses to come to our house. She didn't have many friends because she wasn't friendly. I'm saying this in the nicest way possible, but that lady was hard to be around. Well, I'm glad I have my mother in law out of the way now. I'm actually really thrilled at the turnout of the whole issue. It has boosted my relationship with my wife because formerly I would be too careful not to say bad things about my mother in law, but I'm glad we're now on the same page. My mother in law would probably still hate me for the rest of her life, but I'm not interested in her love. That is lost territory. NTA. Your mother in law needs a man. Simple. She has nothing to do with her time, and her daughter is all she has. NTA. I'm glad your wife came to her senses. Low key. I'm happy that your mother in law got some jail time. She should learn not to dabble in people's business, even if they are family. I'm 22, female. My boyfriend's 23, male, and we had our anniversary. He bought me a book for our anniversary that I have been wanting to read for years. I was so excited to go home and read it. We went to his parents' house to use the restroom, and I left my book on the table because we were going to go out for a bit for the rest of the date night. During our date night, his mother called and said their dog had ripped through my book, but that I could still read it. I started crying, and my boyfriend started laughing. I told him that it wasn't funny. We went along with the rest of our date and had fun. We got back to his parents' house 2 hours later, and I saw that the book was in shambles. Any avid reader would know that just because you can read a torn up book doesn't mean it's actually readable. The first few pages were torn, the edges were a bit off, and there was slobber all over it. I began to cry again and said, "This isn't right," to which my boyfriend started laughing at me. The dog has previously torn up my purse, wallet, makeup, etc., and I let it go. But this was too far. I became really angry and started yelling at him to not laugh at me, and he continued to do so. At this point, I grabbed my stuff and stormed off to my car. He came outside and started saying, "I wasn't laughing. It is a $20 book. I don't see why you're acting like this." To me, it wasn't just a book. It was an anniversary gift that I was ready to baby and cherish for the rest of my life. I just wanted to leave as I felt like my feelings were not being validated. His mom came outside and said, "Don't you think you're being a little dramatic?" This book meant a lot to me. I'm quite poor at the moment, and I'm not really a materialistic person. I know it can be replaced, but I felt like his parents should have taken accountability and replaced the damaged property, and my boyfriend should have validated my feelings. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole? I should probably clarify a few things. No, I did not leave it on a coffee table. I left it on a high table where I have been leaving my things lately. When the dog ripped up my purse and wallet, I left it on a chair. So I now leave my stuff on higher tables. I don't like to leave valuable items in my car because we live in a big city and my car has been broken into. Also, I mentioned in the replies that I was raised by a single mom, and because of that, I didn't have a lot compared to other people. Books also helped me escape when I was thinking about committing suicides. Yes, I have mental health issues, which makes me more sensitive than others. It's gotten better, but I know I'm not perfect. I am in therapy. Wow, did not expect so many comments. I honestly thought I'd just get a few comments and be able to delete them. I want to say that I love my boyfriend and his parents. I talked to my mom and she gave me a bit of insight. My boyfriend is not a cruel person and does everything he can to take care of me. He has helped me out since I can't work at the moment. My mom thinks he was laughing not at me, but at the fact that he couldn't figure out what to do as it's not his dog. So the I didn't laugh at you comment makes sense. I talked to him and his mom and gave them my perspectives. They understood and his mom apologized. She thought I stormed off because the dog ruined the book, but I told her it was because my boyfriend was laughing at me. And she called me dramatic. We hugged it out. My boyfriend apologized for laughing and said he didn't mean to laugh, but that he just didn't know what to do. I apologized to them for yelling and storming off. I told them I'm just going to start leaving stuff in my boyfriend's closet. His mother told me she cries all the time because of the dog destroying things she loves constantly. She didn't offer to replace it, but I have decided to just let it go because I don't like asking people for things. I think things ended well. I can kind of tell they aren't used to having an emotional person like myself around, so I am going to try to start practicing patience. The update made me sadder than the post. They managed to persuade her that she was exaggerating. Fact, you cried. Your boyfriend laughed at your tears. Twice. His mother called you dramatic and never offered to replace the book. You are left without a book, a handbag, wallet, etc. Your feelings have been ignored and laughed at, but you still think they are in the right and all is good. Sad, sad story. ESH. I hate to be that person, but you have a car and you left the book in a place where you know there is a dog who likes to destroy your things. Yes, your boyfriend is an a-hole for the immature way he is handling all of this. But you own some of the blame for this mishap by leaving the book in the first place instead of putting it in your car or taking it with you. You should know by now not to leave anything near the dog, much less something you claim you are going to cherish. It's okay to be upset with your boyfriend for him laughing at you and not seeing how big of a deal this was. It's also okay to be upset with his parents and how they didn't take responsibility for their animal. They 100% should have been apologetic and offered to buy a new one, but at the same time, you need to take responsibility for leaving the book in the first place when you know there is a destructive animal and humans who don't take any responsibility for what the dog destroys. I took my 2-year-old to a play cafe. She wanted to wear her sparkly fairy dress, but as soon as we got there, she wanted to try on something from the costume box. I took off her dress, she had base layers underneath, and put it on the chair at the table where we were sitting. We went off to play and then went back to our table to eat. After a few minutes, my daughter starts bawling and pointing at another little girl, a bit older, maybe 4, who is wearing her dress. She must have gone up to our table and taken it. No big deal. Kids are always rummaging through other people's bags. Her mom was having coffee and chatting to another mom, so obviously hadn't noticed her take it and then just assumed it was from the dressing up box. I tried to calm my daughter down for 10 minutes, explaining that it was nice to share our things and the little girl would be upset if we asked for it back. And I tried distracting her with other things, but 2-year-olds are stubborn and all she wanted was to wear her dress. She was having such a meltdown that my only choices were to either take her home, in which case I'd have had to ask for the dress back before we left, or to speak to the mom. I found a princess dress from the dressing up box and approached the two moms, explained the situation, that it was my daughter's dress from home and it had been on the chair, apologized, saying I should have hidden it in our bag, and said, "Would you mind if we did a swap for this princess dress?" I said, "Please take your time. I don't want to upset your daughter. I'll carry on trying to distract mine." The other little girl obviously wasn't happy about having to take it off, but after about 10 minutes of wrangling, the mom got it off and put it back on our table without saying anything. Then she proceeded to glare at me for the rest of the session. By that point, our two daughters were playing together, and her daughter had completely forgotten about the dress. But this mom completely refused to engage with me and seemed really pissed. AITA? I actually don't really care what random moms think of me, but I also don't want to raise a spoiled child. I just don't know what else I could have done differently, besides having better hidden the dress, which I'll remember for next time. NTA. And I may get some downvotes for this, but when my kids were younger, I didn't always push the "you need to share" thing. If one kid is happily playing with something and another kid suddenly wants it, why should kid A have to give it up to the second one then and there? To me, that only teaches kid B that they can get what they want when they want it, and that's not how life works. They can learn to wait their turn. As for the dress, yes, you should have put it in your bag straight away. So, lesson learned. The other mom sounds insufferable. I took my kids to places like that as toddlers and saw things like that all the time.